Moores is a registered dietitian, and she's a national spokesperson for the American Dietetic Association. Before she became an independent consultant, she worked for a number of years with the Ebenezer Society clinical dietitian so that she knows exactly the problems of senior diets. Well, now, as I say, an independent consultant, she works with health organizations, grocery stores, and overall food-related businesses. Thank you for coming here.
You're welcome.
I am told that many seniors have terrible diet habits, but I didn't realize the extent of it until I received this quote from the American Dietetic Association and the American Academy of Family Physicians. They've estimated that 20 to 60% of older adults in home care and 40 to 85% of those in nursing homes are at risk with malnutrition. Plus, the Institute of Medicine estimates that approximately 40% of community residing persons, that means living at home, 65 years and older, have inadequate nutrient intakes. That's serious. Why does it happen, Sue?
Well, it happens actually to everyone in that we just aren't eating as well as we ought to be eating, which is why I guess dietitians will always have jobs. But for older adults, I think some of it comes from perhaps medications that they're taking, and that affects the taste of the food, and so food all of a sudden just doesn't taste as good as it used to be. There's certainly the lack of interest for some folks in wanting to prepare food anymore. You've gone through your whole life making dinners and lunches, and at some point you just don't want to have to do that anymore, so you opt for more convenience types of foods. And then maybe if you're just cooking for one, sometimes that's not as enjoyable as if you were cooking for a family or cooking for a couple of other people. So there's lots of different reasons that folks sometimes just choose to not or don't eat as well as they
They're generally not in such great health that they're not up to it and so on. Well, we've got the problem. Now, I asked you to do a little something, and I'm very appreciative. You brought a number of food items that might be used for a breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The reason I was so anxious is that, you know, this pyramid stuff, you know, so many helpings of vegetables and fruit, and be careful, don't eat fatty meat and so on, and a lot of grains. Well, at the end of all that, you say, okay, what's to eat tonight? Well,
what's for dinner?
There. So that's why I'm pleased that you have some ideas of how seniors can eat nutritiously and easily.
I've found that it's one of the easiest ways for folks to decide how to eat and what they're eating well is to be able to visualize what their plate ought to look like when they're eating. And so I brought a plate in that just kind of marks off, if you look at your plate and you see that your plate looks this way, you've probably got a pretty healthy diet. If you look at your plate and it doesn't look this way, then there's some work to do.
Okay. So this is the test. Okay.
Yep. So I brought this plate in.
Okay.
And I've marked it off into 3 sections.
The one section is bigger by half, and then you've got the 2 smaller sections. I bet I already know what they're going to be broken into. I'll let you tell us.
The top half should be filled with fruits and vegetables.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Okay.
Of course I'm wrong. I figured I'd get a 12-ounce steak there, but you're not going to tell. That's not right.
Next time. But fruits and vegetables, and the more color in the fruits and vegetables, the better. Because when you look at your diet, color is always a great barometer for figuring out if you're eating well. And the more color, the more greens, the oranges, the reds, the purples, the blues, the rainbow, the better. But that top half, 50% of your plate, ideally would be covered with fruits and vegetables. In this second portion here, that would be protein. And it can be lean red meat, not the fatty red meats, but the lean red meats. And fish. Fish is tremendous for all sorts of good reasons. Beans would be great too, because that counts as a protein. But in this 1/3 of the section, or actually 1/4 of the plate, would be lean meats or proteins.
Okay.
And then this final one is for whole grains. So whole wheats, barley, brown rice, any kind of a whole grain food would be terrific to go here. And then we put dairy kind of off to the side. It's important, but it doesn't necessarily fit on the plate. So that goes off to the side as a serving of dairy with your meals as well. So when you look at your plate, it's just a really quick and easy way to say, boy, I think I've got a pretty healthy meal going here, or why don't I switch it out a little bit because proportion-wise, it ought to look like this.
That's a very helpful
Well, it's a quick and easy way, because to your point, the food pyramid is a great visual, but when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road and what do I do in, day out, meal in, meal out, just have it look like that.
Or where the protein meets the plate, yes. Yeah. Okay, very good.
Exactly.
All right, well then you've got all sorts of samples here.
Yep, well I did bring in, or just have one example here of the, fruit and vegetables and meat. One of the biggest probably issues, I guess, for us as Americans is portion size.
Now, what are we seeing there, first of all?
This is just a little serving of blueberries.
Okay, and the other, I don't see quite well, so what is that?
No, and this is brown rice and
the
wild
other
rice.
is?
And then it's a cut of meat.
Oh, cut of meat, okay.
Yep,
okay,
red
great.
meat.
All right.
When we think about portion size, one of the probably areas where we make, two areas where we make some mistakes as Americans is in our meat portions and then also our drink portions. And when it comes to meat, one portion is considered the size of the palm of your hand.
So that's a decent size there, right there?
Yep, that's probably about 4 ounces cooked.
4 ounces.
Or excuse me, 4 ounces raw, and by the time it's cooked, it's about 3 ounces. But if you go out to a restaurant and you're trying to decide how much should I have, if you look at the palm of your hand and then look at the meat that you get, one serving is the palm of your hand, and we're often served at least 2 palms.
Oh, sure.
So
this way, there's no danger of being stuffed.
right.
Okay.
Right. And that ends up, for folks that are 50 and older, it's the largest segment of the population that has a weight issue, an overweight issue.
What do we have here now?
Over here is our fruits and vegetables, and I just wanted to show, I guess, at this point, color, in that as you look at your plate, think of all the different colors, because every fruit and vegetable offers something different.
Grapes, tomatoes, and salad, and what's the other over there?
Legumes. That is probably the most
that's a
undersold
legume.
food
For
in the
years,
world.
I've heard about legumes, and now I can actually see one. I've always been fascinated by what a legume was.
It's
and
your
there it
beans,
is.
your lentils, your kidney beans, your garbanzo beans, and they are truly the most undersold food in our diets, and one that has probably the most nutrition in it. It's a great and fairly inexpensive, especially
How do you
if you
buy them?
Well, you can buy them raw, where you would have to cook them, but that's pretty time intensive. Buy them canned. And then just rinse them. And you rinse off a lot of sodium if people are worried about sodium.
Now, we're running out of time, so what is this right here?
Those are whole grains, and we talk about whole grains, and people never know, well, what does that mean? So when you get to eating breads and cereals and such, when you look at the ingredient label, the first ingredient on there should be whole wheat, rolled oats, a whole grain, and then you know you've got, multi-grain doesn't do it, it's got to say whole.
And this is bread, of course.
Yep.
And now what are we doing with Quaker Oats, for heaven's sakes?
Well, just again, another example of a whole grain, and I know oatmeal is a big favorite of a lot of folks as they get older because it's a really hearty food that sticks to your ribs. But just make sure that you get the whole variety, the rolled oats, so that you get the biggest bang nutritionally. It's certainly a fine food to have, but it's not a whole grain.
Okay, all right. Okay.
And you want half of the grains that you have to be whole.
So now, overall then, you could set up a meal with a little piece of meat, a little bit of, well, you've got half
A lot of bit of fruit and vegetables.
A meat and the
whole grains.
The whole grains.
Yep. And if folks are not all that interested in eating because they have a lack of appetite, there are wonderful foods on the market that, something like an instant breakfast, we had chatted earlier about that, an instant breakfast drink that gives you a lot of nutrition in a small volume, and all you do is put it in milk and stir,
or a
and you get a
low-fat
meal.
yogurt you mentioned.
Yep, but that doesn't have quite as much nutrition as an instant breakfast drink.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
This was wonderfully helpful. We've been talking to Sue Moores, a dietitian, and you've been talking about a problem that a lot of seniors have. Thanks, Sue.
You bet. My pleasure.